What if the real danger in 17th century Essex wasn't witchcraft at all, but the men who claimed they could see evil in any woman they chose? Walk the old footpaths between Hatfield Peveril, Chelmsford, and Manningtree, and the air feels heavy, as if the soil remembers. In the marshlands, reeds whisper against each other like frightened voices. And sometimes, if the wind is right, a name rises from the dark. Agnes, Elizabeth, Anne, Rebecca. Names spoken not as legends, but as warnings. Because Essex never had a witch problem. Essex had a fear problem. And fear is a weapon that always points downward, toward those with the least power to defend themselves. And that is why their names still matter. If we let their stories fade, if we allow them to be swallowed by time, then the world learns nothing from what was done to them. But if we remember them, truly remember them, then their suffering becomes more than a tragedy. It becomes a lesson. So if this story stayed with you, if you believe their voices deserve to be heard long after the men who silenced them are forgotten, then help keep their names alive. Subscribe to Myths After Midnight, so that women like Agnes, Elizabeth, Anne, and Rebecca are not lost to the dark again. Their memory deserves witnesses. Let us be among them. Long before the chaos of civil war, before witch hunter Matthew Hopkins sharpened his ambitions, Essex already simmered with suspicion. Hatfield Peveril was a place where life was hard and winters were harder. People watched their neighbors closely, and whispers traveled faster than truth. In that world lived Agnes Waterhouse, a woman shaped by years of labor. She had a small home, an even smaller income, and a daughter she loved fiercely, Joan Waterhouse. Her sister, Elizabeth Frances, lived nearby. They were ordinary women. But ordinary women are often the first to be sacrificed when a community needs someone to blame. Villagers began to murmur that Agnes's black cat, thin, ragged, and harmless, was no ordinary pet. They said she called him Sathan, a name chosen in jest, twisted into an accusation. When a neighbor's cow died, when milk spoiled too quickly, when a child woke feverish, the villagers didn't ask why. They asked who. And Agnes was convenient. Elizabeth Frances was interrogated first, and under the weight of pressure she confessed to impossible things. To charms and spirits, to teaching Agnes magic. Confessions extracted at a time when truth mattered less than spectacle. Agnes, too, was pushed toward a story that wasn't hers. And when the judges heard the tale of a cat, of a widow, of a poor woman unable to defend herself, they declared it enough. Agnes Waterhouse was executed in 1566. Her daughter watched. Her name became a headline for a fearful nation. But she was not a witch. She was a woman. And she died because someone needed her to be something else. Essex had seen fear before, but nothing like what came in the year 1645. England was split by civil war. Soldiers marched through fields. Food grew scarce. Ministers preached of devils and divine punishment. And into that atmosphere stepped Matthew Hopkins, a man with quiet footsteps and a colder purpose. He named himself the Witchfinder General, though no such title existed. Power was something he simply took. His first target in Manningtree was Elizabeth Clark, an elderly woman with only one leg. She lived on the edge of poverty, surviving on the charity of people who now looked at her with suspicion. Hopkins ordered that she be watched night and day. Not allowed to sleep. Not allowed to rest. Her exhaustion was not an accident. It was the method. When the human mind is cracked open by sleeplessness, truth becomes fragile. Elizabeth eventually broke, as anyone would. And in her brokenness she gave Hopkins what he wanted: names. Women she knew. Women she trusted. Women who would soon die because one man demanded fuel for his hunt. Elizabeth Clark's confession spread like wildfire. Among the accused was Anne West, known in Manningtree as a stern but hard-working mother. Her daughter, Rebecca West, barely 20, was arrested as well. Rebecca was terrified. Hopkins promised mercy if she spoke. She confessed. But mercy was not something Hopkins ever intended to give. And West was executed. Rebecca lived. But lived with the knowledge that her words had helped kill her own mother. A wound that no amount of time could ever mend. And they were not the only ones. Anne Leach, Ellen Smith, Helen Clark, Elizabeth Gooding. Women whose stories were never recorded because the men who judged them didn't care enough to write them down. Women who worked fields, baked bread, mended clothing, raised children. Until the moment a man with a notebook decided they were dangerous. Dozens of Essex women died in this wave of hysteria. Dozens more were jailed, beaten, or forced to confess. Not a single spellbook was found. Not a single coven uncovered. Not a single piece of evidence that would stand in any honest court. Just fear. Just men. Just silence. Centuries later, the fields look peaceful. The villages quaint. The cottages restored. But the ground beneath Essex has known horror. Not the supernatural kind, but the human kind. When you walk through Manningtree at dusk, the air feels strangely watchful. When you cross Mistlay Heath, the wind changes tone, as if carrying a memory. Agnes Waterhouse, Elizabeth Clark, Anne West, Rebecca West, Anne Leach, Ellen Smith, Helen Clark, Elizabeth Gooding. Their names remain. Not because they were witches, but because they were victims of a world where truth bent easily beneath the weight of men's fear. So when you hear the word witch, remember Essex. Remember these women. And remember that the darkest magic in history was never in the hands of women like them, but in the hands of the men who condemned them. And if this story moved you, know that there are more. Across centuries and continents, countless women were silenced, punished, erased. Not because they were monsters, but because they lived in a world that feared their voice, their knowledge, their existence. On this channel, we tell their stories. We bring their names back into the light. We honor the women history tried to forget, and the ones it buried on purpose. So if you want to hear more of these forgotten truths, if you want to help give these women the witnesses they never had in life, take a look around the channel. And if you feel called to it, Subscribe to Myths After Midnight.